All right, we're gonna get started. My name is Joe Pavo. I work for MassDot. I'm the project manager on the Chelsea Viaduct project. We're only gonna have two other people speaking other than myself, Mark Kolonowski with HNTB to my right, and Jessica Casey, who's signing in. She'll be in a little bit from the MBTA. So the purpose of tonight's meeting, hi Jessica. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to update the public on what changes we've made, not only to the design, but as far as our commitments to mitigation that we've been discussing up until this point. Approximately a month ago, we met with the city council and the city manager to update them ahead of time on what our mitigation commitments were for this project, and just to give them an update on design and schedule. So we're gonna go through a PowerPoint tonight. Just wanna remind everybody, if you didn't sign in, please do so on your way out. Mark's gonna go through a presentation. Jessica from the MBTA was gonna talk to a couple of slides, I believe, at the end, and then we'll open it up to some general questions. Okay, everybody will have an opportunity to speak at the end.
Does anyone need translation who's here tonight? We have the services available. No. Okay, so we're going to start off here going through a general project overview. I recognize a few of the faces in the audience, so I apologize if some of this is repetitious for a few of you, but just to catch up on the work that is proposed, existing conditions, and then we want to get into, as Joe alluded to, the meat of the discussion, where we're going to talk about some of the changes to the design and the mitigation package since the last time we were here, since the last time the 25% design public hearing. Quick agenda. We're going to be talking about, again, just the need for the project, the goals, the schedules, where we are today, and the direction the project is going to take moving forward. The project team consists of MassDot, the Federal Highway Administration. The consultant team is led by HNTB, along with Howard Stein Hudson, CME, VHB, Green International. Project partners include MBTA and the City of Chelsea as well. Project limits of work include the entire structure, the Chelsea Viaduct, on Route 1. The northern limit of work is right north of Chelsea High School, and then continues southbound all the way to where the viaduct transitions over to the Tobin Bridge, which is right at this location right there. And just a bird's eye view to better orient yourself of the project area, including the ramps, Arlington Street on-ramp, Carter Street on-ramp, 6th Street on-ramp. So the Chelsea Viaduct, as most of you know, carries Route 1 through the city of Chelsea, carries about 63,000 vehicles a day. It was constructed in the late 1950s. It is a major regional component to the transportation system here, north of Boston, leading in and out of the city. Also carries a variety of transit routes, MBTA Bus Route 11, and a few other options, Bus Route 11 being the primary service from Chelsea into Boston for commuters, or for transit riders. Existing conditions, for those of you who have been underneath the viaduct, you understand the deterioration that is occurring. The structure itself is structurally deficient. Both the deck and the structure are in poor to severe condition. Want to reiterate that this does not mean that it is not safe to drive on the viaduct. It is indeed safe. It's not going to fall down, but it is in pretty rough shape and is in need of some serious repairs. So the goals of the project, number one, being to correct those substandard conditions. We want to advertise the project in 2018 to align the construction of this project with the construction that's going to be happening of the rehabilitation project that's going to be occurring on the Tobin Bridge. And then another large goal of the project is to reduce impacts to abutters to the maximum extent possible. We understand that this is going to be quite the burden on the community, and we want to reduce and lessen those impacts to the most that we can. Project status, this is where we are today. The important thing on this is that we are right now 75% design has been complete. In the coming months, we're going to be advancing towards final design. That by no means is saying that the project is not receptive to hearing the community concerns and that there isn't an opportunity for concerns to be incorporated into the design moving forward. So again, at 75% design, which was completed just this month, final design to be right now scheduled to be occurring or completed in May next month, with the goal of advertising the project in June. Public outreach to date, and this is a list I'm not going to go through, I'm not going to read all this, but as you can see, there has been a substantial effort made to engage the community, engage the public, hear your concerns, and then incorporate those concerns into the design. And that's the intent tonight, is to go through our plan and how everything has been incorporated into the design and the mitigation package for the project. The scope of work, first and foremost, includes to rehabilitate, repair, make improvements onto the existing superstructure and substructure, utilizing prefabricated bridge units, or PBUs as we refer to them. PBUs are a accelerated bridge construction methodology. We'll get into a little bit more detail on that later. We also plan on installing crash barriers, a solid snow fence where possible, where it doesn't impede the sight distance on the viaduct. We're going to replace roadway lighting, bridge drainage, and also rehabilitate the existing parking lots beneath the structure. So this is a view of the existing conditions underneath. As you can see, there's quite an amount of deterioration, rust, just not very aesthetically pleasing or structurally sound. So as part of the project, we have a series of options which we are engaging with the public to enhance beneath the structure, to try to give it a little bit more of a community feel to the maximum extent that you could do underneath the structure such as this. So the design team have developed a few potential alternatives, what can be done to the supporting elements right here, the beams in place. If we go back and look at the picture I showed before, really not very nice to look at. We have a few options here. This standard column, concrete encasement. We're exploring other alternatives or other options for this that could include possibility of artist displays. This could be done on a rotation. We could work with the city could engage with the high school community groups to have a rotating art display beneath the viaduct. Here's a few other options that we're working with. Let me go back here. So these options are on display in a few locations, both here in City Hall as well as the library throughout the community. And we are seeking the input of the community to determine what's the most favorable of these options were. This one right here, which would allow itself to be painted, repainted in a artist rotation. This is the current leader. These are also on display downstairs. And then we have these two other options. You can see in this one, this offers an opportunity for there to be an interchangeable art display that could be up there for a given amount of time and then switched out with other art displays. The scope of the superstructure, again, the entire superstructure will be replaced. We intend to utilize these prefabricated bridge units. Again, they are an accelerated bridge construction method. These bridge units, the units themselves are produced off-site, and then they're shipped in, and then they are laid down in a series, and the project would kind of caterpillar along. This allows for a shorter duration in one location and allows the project to be done in a much faster duration as opposed to a traditional construction method. This is a photo from one of the bridges that was done during MassDOT's Fast 14 project, which was acclaimed for its efficiency. This is a rendering of how the PBUs, prefabricated bridge units, would be installed. Again, brought in from off-site, dropped in place here, and then over the course of time, a very short duration, over a day or two. The project then caterpillars along to the next span here, and again, we bring in these bridge units from off-site and just kind of work our way down the viaduct, as opposed to a standard cast-in-place construction method where the operation is more confined to one location for a long duration. There are spans within the viaduct where those PBUs cannot be utilized. This is due to varying constraints. The two locations where the PBUs or the ABC accelerated bridge methods will not be able to be utilized are right at the southern limit of the project, and then up where the viaduct crosses over the Silver Line or the commuter rail. At these locations, it is going to be conventional repair, which will be longer in duration. We'll get into a little bit more about how we're going to schedule that to reduce the impacts to abutters. The construction schedule, post-advertising in June of 18, notice to proceed will then be given to the contractor in the fall. Work on the substructure will begin in 2019, going out through the entire duration of 2019. The work on the superstructure, the PBUs that I was just talking about, that work will begin in spring of 2020 and will continue throughout 2020, with the final restoration on the viaduct being completed in 2021. So during the impacts to traffic throughout the project, because the project is broken down, split into those two phases, the substructure work and the superstructure work, we've analyzed and looked at the impacts to traffic based upon those phases. The substructure work will have no impacts to traffic on Route 1. There will be no lane closures during that substructure work. And again, that's occurring in 2020. We will see the bulk of the impacts, or I should say all of the impacts to regional traffic resulting from the work on the superstructure. During that time, when the substructure is being rehabilitated, southbound Route 1 will be reduced from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, and northbound will also be reduced to 3 lanes to 2 lanes, and this will coincide with what's being done on the Tobin Bridge rehabilitation project. So Tobin Bridge rehab project will be reduced also, northbound from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, and then that work will align with what's being done on the viaduct, thereby matching those constructed conditions from 2 lanes. So there'll be a seamless transition from the Tobin Bridge rehab project onto the viaduct project. So to dive in a little bit more deeply into what's going to be happening at those spans where I was saying where the PBUs couldn't be used and where traditional construction methods were going to have to be applied, in order to limit the impacts to the abutters at these locations, MassDOT is proposing a 12-weekend significant lane reduction on the viaduct. During these 12 weekends, the viaduct Route 1 will be limited to 1 lane in each direction, and the contractor will be afforded 55-hour work windows from Friday until very early Monday morning. The intent here is that the construction, and this is where you would have fairly substantial noise impacts, hours of operation going throughout the evening, so that impact would be limited in its duration. As opposed to if the 12-weekend shutdown wasn't being utilized, the contractor would be spending approximately 6 months at each location. So the idea here is for regional traffic to deal with those impacts, take the brunt of them all at once, along with the community, so it doesn't have to be drawn out over the course of 6 months. Regional traffic mitigation, we will be working with, or the contractor will be working with a public outreach specialist. There will be a robust program put into place where commuters, both regionally and locally, are made aware of the construction schedule and what the plan is, when people will be working, when lanes will be shut down. There will be a police detail program set in place. We've identified, and I will show a map here in a moment, we've identified key locations where we feel that details are going to be required in order to mitigate whatever local traffic impacts there are. There will be advanced warning signs, letting commuters know of when to expect impacts, again, both regionally and locally. Signals at intersections, there will be retimed and coordinated with one another. And the intent of the traffic mitigation plan is that it's not going to be one and done, right? So this plan isn't just put in place during the design phase, but throughout its implementation in week 1, week 2, week 3, we'll be out in the community and seeing what's happening locally. And if a detail needs to be repositioned at another location to help mitigate what these local impacts are on the local roads, that's an option that we have available to us. And again, to reiterate, the eye isn't being taken off the ball here, but we're going to continue to be here and take a first-hand account and then react appropriately to ensure that most is being done as that first wave of impacts is felt. Here's the map that I was talking about. Again, just showing some of these key locations where we do expect details to be located, and this can and most likely will be adjusted once we have a better understanding of how things are actually being played out. There will be local traffic detours at all phases of the project. Excuse me. There will be local nighttime road closures intermittently, and this is to allow the contractor the opportunity to utilize local roads to access the viaduct up above. There'll be weekend closures of the Carter Street off-ramp. The Arlington Street on-ramp will be closed during all construction phases, but will be reopened. We'll dive into that a little bit further later on in the presentation. So we anticipate impacts to the abutters. I've said this before in front of a few different groups. It's not possible to avoid all impacts to abutters. We're talking about a heavy construction operation. It will be loud, there will be dust. However, there will be mitigation plans created prior to construction in an effort to abate the impacts to the maximum extent. So for noise, the viaduct, especially in a few key locations, the viaduct is located approximately, 35 to 40 feet from residences, very close, within a very close proximity. At a selected number of locations, MassDOT has gone out and has measured ambient noise levels during normal periods of day, both during the day and at night. The contractor will be required to work with an acoustical engineer to take those measurements and then develop a noise abatement plan. The contractor will be directed of allowable noise levels, and in the event that those noise levels are expected to be exceeded, they will have to put up temporary mitigation measures in place to ensure that residents do not experience the full brunt of those exceeded noise levels. That mitigation could look like temporary noise barriers. There can be noise reduction, noise lessening technologies and applications can be put on construction equipment to keep those noise levels below the allowable amount. There's going to be a loss of parking temporarily beneath the viaduct. The reason for that is that the contractor needs to access the substructure to get beneath. So there will be temporary parking loss. However, there will be the construction of a new parking lot adjacent to the high school on Carter Street, which will be accessible to whichever parking lot is being affected temporarily, and then whoever would be the users of that parking lot will be able to access that Carter Street parking lot. There will be a strict lead and dust control plan put on the contractor. The contractor will be required to comply with national or federal, state, and local regulations regarding lead control. There will be a dust control plan in place. During construction and demolition operations, all activities will be required to be sprayed down with water to limit dust, and this will all be monitored by an environmental monitor on site. And in the event that those allowable conditions, again, are exceeded, it'll be up to the environmental monitor, or the environmental monitor, I should say, will be given the authority to halt the operation until the impacts are mitigated for before being allowed to continue. This project is federally funded and does require review and approval under the National Environmental Policy Act. MassDOT is coordinating with the Federal Highway Administration throughout this process and will continue to engage throughout the environmental review. The public participation plan has been in place for quite some time now. Many of you have seen us before. You'll continue to see us. We have taken, a very serious approach to engaging with the community and try to connect with all residents, all stakeholders, so there are no surprises. And again, to hear your concerns and incorporate them into the design where possible. There is a fairly robust mitigation plan in place. On the screen here, you see the mitigation commitments that MassDOT had committed to prior to the 25% design public hearing. They're fairly straightforward. We had worked with, or we had spoken with the city manager, the city council, and we were aware of a number of concerns prior to the design public hearing. So prior to that, or before the design public hearing, some of the mitigation measures that we had already, or that MassDOT had agreed to, was the allowance, or to provide an allowance for additional crossing guards near schools within the project area, those architectural improvements to the supporting elements beneath the structure, which I had shown, the weekend construction, which I described, in order to lessen those impacts, shorten the duration so we could be in and out as quickly as possible, improve the lighting underneath the structure. All parking lots beneath the viaduct will be rehabilitated, resurfaced, restriped, and there will be strict incentives and disincentives, in the contract, which rewards the contractor financially, monetarily, if they are able to finish a given portion of the project ahead of schedule. If they exceed what has been scheduled, then they are then decentivized and they need to pay a penalty. So these were all elements of the mitigation package that was prior to the last time we were here. So we heard overwhelmingly through the design public hearing, through our meetings with Chelsea Green Routes, through our meetings with City Council, Chelsea Collaborative, one-on-ones, the business community, that there was strong opposition to the closure of Ramp A, or the 5th Street on-ramp. The project had originally included the demolition of this ramp due to a reduction in traffic volumes, I should say due to a low number in traffic volumes. Based on the feedback that we heard, again, overwhelmingly, the decision was made to keep Ramp A in the project. As of right now, actually I shouldn't say as of right now, this ramp will stay open. The ramp is going to be rehabilitated. There will be no shift in geometry, and the ramp will be closed during construction and will open after construction. The ramp will stay in place. We also heard last time we were here, quite strikingly, stories about the impact of snow removal along the viaduct and the damage that snow falling off of the viaduct does to abutting properties, broken windows. We took that very seriously, and tried to determine the most appropriate measures that we could in order to stop that from happening. The project always included the installation of new snow barrier. Snow barrier, the traditional snow barrier that MassDOT installs, they tend to be slotted, so it allows for material to get through. However, due to the proximity to these properties, to the viaduct, any material that was getting through was having a direct impact on the residences. So we looked around and we found that there are solid snow barriers available. And what these are is there are, just like they sound, they are a solid fence that would prevent any material from getting off of the viaduct or from falling off of the viaduct during snow removal operations. The solid snow fence serves two purposes. Stops any debris or material from falling off as a result of plows, but it also serves and provides noise deadening it contains noise deadening properties. So we also heard, to step back, a third concern about the levels of noise as a result of traffic that direct abutters experience, during the day and at night. The project does not qualify as a Type 1 project. Therefore, it does not qualify for the installation of a sound barrier. However, the solid snow fence, just so happens, provides nearly the identical amount of sound reduction that you would experience with the installation of a traditional noise fence along a highway. So the solid snow barrier, which we looked into after hearing what was happening to properties, just so happens coincidentally to provide some of the same noise reducing, or has the same level of noise reduction. So dual benefit, and we think this is positive. Additionally, MassDOT, through coordination with the city manager, has agreed to providing an $800,000 mitigation fund to the city. This fund can be utilized basically at any way the city sees fit, so long as the money is spent to mitigate impacts directly resulting from the viaduct. So there are numerous opportunities here. A few of them could be for an aesthetic improvement program for abutters, a ornamental light installation beneath the viaduct. The city could hire an independent environmental monitor. There are a number of opportunities here, but again, so long as the money is spent to mitigate the impacts of the viaduct. We also heard a request during our previous outreach efforts that all property beneath the viaduct be returned to the city of Chelsea. Due to existing lease agreements that MassDOT has with other agencies, and due to the need to be able to access beneath the structure to provide or to improve and maintain the structure, handing all that land over to the city is not possible. However, adjacent to the high school, MassDOT, as I was alluding to earlier, as I was explaining earlier, will be constructing a parking lot to mitigate that loss of parking. At the end of the project, MassDOT has agreed to turn this parking lot over to the city of Chelsea to be used as the city sees fit. It could be used to maintain parking. It could be used to provide additional parking to the high school. It could be used as a farmer's market on the weekends. It could be used for an art installation. It could be used for a skate park. Again, it will be handed over to the city upon the completion of the project. And then we have also heard a series of concerns regarding MBTA operations and the rider experience, both locally getting to and from the city of Boston. And this project has committed to facilitating that discussion between the MBTA and Chelsea. It's important, I think, to point out that we, the project team, and MBTA have looked at this, the impacts of our project holistically, and are confident that due to the limits of our project, the Chelsea Viaduct rehabilitation will not reduce in and of itself, in and of the project will not result in any significant or even moderate delays to bus operations. If anything, there would be minor operations on the local street, but any delays that would be felt on Route 1, the Tobin Bridge, the viaduct itself, would not occur as a result of the viaduct rehab project. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica Casey from MBTA Operations.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jess Casey, and I work with the MBTA operations team. We work in service planning and scheduling. So what that means is a couple of different things. One thing that the team looks at is all of the bus routes and all of the rail, as well as we help with commuter rail, sometimes ferries, but more bus and rail. And we try to understand what the buses are doing and how they're traveling, and the same with rail. And so we've been involved in putting out the schedules, understanding how the buses and the rail are actually meeting those schedules, and understanding where short, but where also we're able to deliver service in a meaningful way. There's a few things that I want to mention on the Route 111. So I think that the team absolutely is correct in thinking about the Route 111 when it comes to Chelsea Viaduct, but also the Tobin Bridge and North Washington Street Bridge. We know that Route 111 is going to have impacts, right, from all three of those. And one of the things that we've heard a lot from the public on is stop talking about Route 111 just for Chelsea Viaduct, just for Tobin Bridge, and just for North Washington Street Bridge. And so part of what we've been doing is working with the community and working with Green Routes to be able to talk about Route 111 in two ways. The first way that we've been talking about Route 111 is just the fundamental service that is delivered on Route 111 and what that looks like. We know that it's overcrowded, we know that there are drop trips, and we know that there are ways that we can look at to improve that service. So part of doing that is an effort that we have ongoing, looking at 175 bus routes to be able to understand how resources are allocated, what that looks like, and how we can move those resources around to be able to understand how to close the gap in the scheduled service versus the current service delivery that we offer on Route 111. The second way that we've been thinking about Route 111 is the Chelsea Gateway. So Chelsea Gateway is the SL3. The SL3 will begin service on April the 21st. There are 4 brand new stations located in Chelsea. Chelsea Station, which is the Mystic Mall. Then we have Bellingham Square. We have Box District, and then Eastern Station. The SL3 kicks off on, as I said, April 21st, but what you'll end up seeing and what we have modeled on the team, what we've seen, is that the Route 111 carries around 11,700 people each day, and then 97% of those people actually get on the bus in Chelsea, and on the outbound, 93% of those people get off the bus in Chelsea. What we've tried to do is take a look to see how the SL3 can help alleviate some of that pressure. So when the SL3 kicks off, what we estimate seeing, or what the modeling is showing us, is that up to 2,000 people that currently take Route 111, it'll be possible for them to take the SL3, which means that we'll have reduced crowding, which then impacts dwell time, which then helps the bus move faster through the system. But the other thing that we've been doing is that we've been trying to work with the city and trying to work with different municipalities in order to figure out dedicated bus lanes, transit signal prioritization, and signal optimization, which are all transportation terms for how do you get the bus to move faster along its route. All of these technical terms that I've learned over the last number of months, but what the objective is really how do we clear path, how do we get the bus moving, how do we reduce dwell time, and where they need to go. And I think more times than not, when it comes to transportation, we talk about these things where It's not very often that people get up in the morning and want to take the bus just for the sake of taking the bus, right? Transportation is a means. It's a means to get where you need to go. You need to go to work, you need to go to school, you need to see your family, you need to do these things. And so part of what the team strives to do is figure out what people need and how they need it and how we can offer a diverse services to be able that people have options of where they need to go. But the other piece is knowing that Route 111 needs to fundamentally be looked at. We need to understand more about how we can close the gap between what the schedule, what the services that we're providing. So those are two pieces that I wanted to offer. The second thing that I wanted to offer, and of course we're going through these sort of slides here, but I'm more on the fly as far as these slides, because we've been talking to Green Routes. We went and saw Green Routes on March the 22nd. We heard a ton of feedback, actually, and it was a really great discussion. We probably had, I don't know, Donnie, how many people we have? Like, yeah, and it was just a really interactive conversation. We heard a couple of things when it comes to Route 111. One thing we heard was, can the T please consider on the 111 or mitigating fares completely? Can you just take fares away? And so that was one thing that we had heard as a request. The second thing that we heard as a request was Route 111 really suffers from drop trips, and it suffers from drop trips because it's a key bus route, which means that we have more operators and more vehicles on that route. So when operators call in or they're sick or they're unable to run the route, what ends up happening is the garage may take an operator off of Route 111 to be able to ensure that a route that may only have one or two buses on it actually has some level of service, right? So the second request that we got was, can you please look at drop trips and stop pulling operators off of the Route 111, right? So we have 16 buses that operate on Route 111 during the AM and PM peak. And so can you please ensure, to the greatest extent possible, that you have 16 operators driving 16 vehicles at all times? So was the second thing that we heard. We also heard, can you communicate? Can you tell us what's going on, right? Can you tell us what's going on? Can you tell us what you're seeing? And so we've started that exercise in the sense that as of this week, on Monday, we started to, as of Saturday actually, we have our Operation Control Center, and they're looking at the run times on the Route 111 specifically during the whole lifetime of this construction, right? So not just Chelsea Viaduct, but Tobin Bridge and North Washington Street Bridge as well. Deputy General Manager Gonneville is the person that I report to, and he said to me, Jess, I want to know, 7:45 every day we have a call, I want to know what Route 111 looks like. So on a daily basis, we're reporting what those numbers look like, and we'll continue to do so. We've also heard different strategies of, can you look at commuter rail? Chelsea commuter rail station's right there. How many people are within walking distance of the commuter rail station? Is it possible to look at that as a way to get people where they need to go? So we've heard many different recommendations, and we've been to several meetings now to collect those recommendations. I encourage you tonight to be able to offer additional recommendations and thinking about how Route 111 is impacted and what you might think of as potential strategies. The MBTA has heard a lot of questions about what is the plan? What is the plan, and when are you telling us the plan, and why haven't you told us a plan already, right? So we've heard a lot of that as well, and it's absolutely right. People are frustrated with Route 111 to begin with, and then there's all of these things that are happening to Route 111. So all of these things happening in and around Route 111, which are causing a lot of concern. So we've committed to delivering a final Chelsea plan that will cover Chelsea Viaduct, Tobin Bridge, and North Washington Street Bridge. Committed to delivering that to the city manager as well as the council by April the 15th. We actually have a meeting tomorrow to walk through the draft plan, right, to look at what that looks like and to think about all of these different approaches. So I do recommend if you have recommendations, please let me know. I know I recognize a few people from the Green Routes meeting that we had on March the 22nd. And just to give you a little bit of an idea, the Green Routes meeting, we talked a lot about Route 111 specifically, first and foremost, just general service. And then we also talked about the impact of these 3 projects. So if you wanted to take a look at the Green Routes presentation, that's also online. It's on their Facebook page, I think, and a few other places. So just if you want to take a look at that, it's more specific to Route 111 itself. But I think more than not, one of the things that we wanted to leave you with is that we meet on a weekly basis, we meet bi-weekly, we meet monthly. We meet with different teams. Rob Guptill is the manager of planning. Yeah? Awesome. We have all of these long, convoluted titles in some way, shape, or form. So, but Rob is a key member of the team, and Rob works with all of the service planners to be able to work with all of the teams to understand what these impacts are. And so what I wanted to let you know is that we will be here, the MBTA will be here. We won't be here just for the viaduct, but we will be here for the Tobin Bridge and also the North Washington Street Bridge. I think one thing that I've heard from the community is, you know, you guys show up and then I never see you again, right? Where'd you go? And so one of the things I wanted to do was Rob's time and work with in the community. I think what you're going to end up seeing is that we're going to monitor Route 111. It's going to be an active plan. We are going to offer a draft plan tomorrow, but I think the takeaway is that we're going to be watching it every day, and that as the construction changes and the impacts change on the construction, that plan is going to be a live plan, and that we're going to change that plan to be more responsive over time. So I don't want people to walk out of this room thinking that we're going to set it and kind of forget it. We're going to be working with you guys throughout all of this to make it right. The comment I got last time we talked to folks here was, sure, you say that now, but what happens when you go away and then the next person comes in? Then what are you going to do? But I'm committing to you that the MBTA work with all of you and the city council to be able to make this plan work. And I know that it will be challenging. I'm not denying that. I know that part of the challenge of this is you have 3 projects with 3 different sets of impacts happening all at times, and so it leaves you concerned because you're not really sure what it's going to look like and when it's going to look like that. But we're committed to working with you, and we're committed to helping. So we know it's not just Route 111. We know it's 116, 117, 112. We know that those run through Chelsea as well. So I just want you to know that we're thinking holistically about it. We're meeting with all of our partners, MassDot, the city, local community groups, to be able to try to create a plan that is alive change over time to make sure that the Route 111 is serving you to the greatest extent possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. We're gonna open it up to questions. Does any elected officials that want to speak? Did you want to say anything? No. All right. So if you want to just state your name for the record, we'll take your questions.
Folks should come down to the microphone for the use of public access cable TV. So I think we don't need to, I think we can just do show of hands. We don't have to have people. So just step up to the microphone.
Come on up.
So my name is Monica Elias, Chelsea resident, and my only question, I guess for the MBTA, who would be the key contact if anybody wanted to place a concern?
So right here on the screen, you got 2 means to contact. Nate is the public involvement specialist, so any concerns that you bring through Nate will ultimately end up with Jessica if it's a T-related issue. So these are the primary contacts right here.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Roman Pucko. I'm a member of the Polish American Veterans Post 13 of Chelsea and a Vietnam-era veteran. I'd like to thank you, Joe Pavo, for doing an excellent job. You also. I was embarrassed by the last meeting. I actually walked out. I wanted to have something to say. I am shocked at how this meeting is going.
Thank you for that.
Now, I know the residents are concerned about noise, and I see now that you're addressing that situation, and that's great. Lead contamination removal, decontamination, or encapsulation. You're addressing that. One thing you're not addressing, and was never mentioned, is sometimes the lights shine onto properties that were built before the expressway was built. And not that many, but one place I read that, well, the barrier is going to be higher, but is it going to be high enough to give some relief to these existing structures, so that just at those locations, and it's not all over the place, there's just a few that, could be addressed.
That's a good comment. I think we'll take a look at that. I think you're going to find as part of the solid barrier that we're going to be putting up, that's going to block a lot of the light coming
Yeah.
down onto the residences. So we'll take a look at that.
Good. And I'm super happy of the snow protection and the noise abatement. I got to give you kudos for that. I'm really pleased. I lived in Chelsea from 1940 to 1975. First at 1 Chestnut Street, to Gateway, to the Naval Hospital. We were the last family to move out so they can build the Beacon Street off-ramp. And then we located at the corner of 3rd and Chestnut, just, 1 block from 4th Street where the bridge ended. I'm completely familiar with the area. I'm completely familiar, with the Northeast Expressway from the Tobin Bridge to when it enters or leaves Chelsea. I'd like to find out how I can get involved in studying this, because I have some ideas of closing off-ramps that are really not necessary, only from experience. And I've been involved in the city of Chelsea so much that at one meeting, a counselor said to me in front of Jay Ash, "You ought to give him an office here," because he spends so much time. And finally, I'd like to ask all the people, if they can, when they're down on Broadway, looking at the Salvation Army thrift store that's is empty, at Stebbins Fountain, right in the front entrance where the 2 doors are, there's a photograph of a statue of my father. When the statue was formed, shortly after that, he was holding his glasses like this. The glasses are ripped off. So I'd like to ask the city manager, maybe he can appropriate some money so that my father can have his glasses back. And again, I'm thankful for what's been done right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Lynn Mesa. My husband and I have lived here in Chelsea for 43 years. I'm also the secretary of a community group which is called Chelsea Uniting Against the War. At our last meeting, I raised my main concern, which is for the health of our children, around the lead paint and the removal of the lead paint. But I wanted to raise a couple, and that was addressed last week at the meeting on the Tobin Bridge project. We use the 111, and I've got to say that the last time I was on the 111, I actually felt like I was either in Honduras or the Philippines. It was just so crowded and so jammed, and there wasn't enough room, for people that wanted to get on. So I appreciate that this is going to be looked at. But one of the issues I wanted to raise is about the Cary Square buses. We live in the Prattville area of Chelsea. And there's a lot of people in Chelsea that live beyond Cary Square. And what happens is those of us that live beyond Cary Square will not take the buses that end in Cary Square because then you have to wait for another bus or walk, and it's quite a long walk. So I think that would be one area to look at. Years ago, all the buses, I think, did the complete route without buses like stopping their route there. So that might be an easy way or a less difficult way of adding to the ability of people to not have to wait longer on that bus. The other thing that I wanted to share is that, to me, the best contribution that was made at the meeting with the Tobin Bridge was actually by a police officer, and they had done a study on traffic, which may not impact your project, but it certainly would impact that project. And I don't know if it might be worth consulting their, whatever it is, committee that studied traffic, because they had a very clear idea of one proposal that was being made that just was not going to work, and it was just a question of opening up a road. I think it was Chestnut Street in the opposite direction. So, and that, yeah, and I guess, I don't know if this impacts you or not, but there was also raised that the idea of diverting the 111 onto Carter Street, which, if that happens between 7 and 8 in the morning, could be a real problem, because that's when the high school kids are, like, most of the high school end up crossing that street to get to school. So that's something that I think is important to take into account. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was at that meeting, and I do recall that comment by that police officer. I think it was the Beacon Street off-ramp and how that detour was going to be handled, because it was done in the past. We did get that police officer's card, and we are going to be coordinating with them for the Tobin project, which is one of my counterparts at the same office. Different project manager, but we are working on that.
Mary Ann Winship, 62 Beacon Street. I have 3 things to comment on. First of all, for some reason, this particular meeting tonight, I only found out about it because I called Hannah at a number on a paper that I had from a previous meeting, that this, for whatever reason, I had signed up for the emails from DOT and all the other meetings, and I've been at the other meetings, but I did not know about this meeting. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't made the effort to call. It was in the city manager's newsletter today, but that was a little bit late. So I bring it up because in the future, if there's more ways to publicize meetings, or just to tighten up all the cracks in the notifications, because I think that there would be more people here tonight if, for example, it had been listed on Nextdoor Waterfront or Chelsea social media. Okay, so that's point number 1. Point number 2 is what Lynn was referring to about the block of Chestnut Street, that they reversed the direction when they closed the Beacon Street ramp, and it's because people are all using the 4th Street ramp off the bridge going north. And I have a related question, which may or may not be suitable for this meeting, but I want to know where the bus stop's going to be when the Beacon Street ramp is closed. The closest bus stop to Beacon Street, where it's going to be, if it'll be. In the past, it was on 2nd Street, right on the, I guess you'd call it Chelsea Square, where the fountain is. But that's an important thing to know ahead of time also. And I think that's it. Those are my questions.
I can answer the question about where the bus stop will be after the bus, when Beacon Street ramp is closed and we have to use the 4th Street ramp. The first stop will be, as you mentioned, on 2nd Street on the park. Well, I should mention that we're reaching out to the city right now. That was where we had that stop the previous time. And we're in the process right now of reaching out to the city to see if we can get that parking marked away for us so that we can use that stop again. But that's our plan.
Yes, sir.
My name is John Gunning, 62 Beacon Street. I noticed you said earlier that if some of the areas were congested, that you'll have a police detail to assist. I want to use the casino in Everett as an example, not to offend any of our local cops. They do a great job. I was just over there, and construction brought 2 lanes into one, and when that happened, it did a pile up where cars couldn't go through the light. Then when the light changed, we had to stop and wait for the road to the right, which was vacant. So if a cop had stepped up, he could have overruled the traffic light and let us go through, but that never happened. Instead, the Everett police just sat around and watched the construction going on. If you're going to have a police detail, I would like to see the police deal not only concerns for the construction, but concern for the road and the vehicles going through. Whether that means you have to have 2 police officers instead of 1, it would be nice. And I only mention this because Wynn Casino is not the only example. Every time I see construction, it's them watching the people working for their safety, which is appropriate, but they're not taking care of the traffic, which is backing up constantly, unneedfully, because all they have to do is step forward, wave them through, override, take control, but they don't. So I'm just saying, if you're going to do something with the police detail, I hope you have enough to not only take care of the construction, but the drivers as well, because we do get backed up quick. Example is Everett Ave in Broadway. They park right in front of the traffic light. They pull up. They can't make it all the way across, so they stop, and they block the traffic going in both directions. So that adds to the congestion again. Whereas if a detail is there that actually watches the vehicles would stop, the lane would be open, people can get through. That's not happening in a lot of places where constructions are going on overall. So I just hope you have enough.
Yeah, so to address that real quick, I mean, the casino's a little bit different because that's a static construction zone. What we're going to do here, Mark was referring to, is we have a police detail plan that's going to be in effect for, 3, 4, 5 weeks, as often as we need police details. Their primary purpose is going to be to pull traffic. So their direction is going to be to pull all the traffic during the rush hour. This is just a plan. We're going to be out monitoring it. The consultant's going to be out. MassDOT will be out. We'll be taking a look at how these intersections are operating, and we'll be able to add a second detail if we need it to a location, or pull a detail if we don't need them and put them somewhere else. So it's going to be a very fluid plan up until probably 2 or 3 weeks in, until people get used to where they're going and people have set routes. Because what happens on day 1 and day 2 and day 3 is not going to be the same as 2 weeks into this project. So very well taken point, and we will adjust the plan as necessary to accommodate that. Thank you. Anybody else have a comment?
Rich DeCaro. I live on Poplar Street in Chelsea, and I'm just curious. I'd like to consider myself one of the abutters. I'm very close to the bridge, but I've had no contact. No one's visited my home. And in one of your slides, you're saying you guys are doing door-to-doors. I've not had anybody contact me. I'm not getting emails. I'm finding out about this through word of mouth, basically. And, I've added my email to the mailing list. I've talked to some of you gentlemen before, and, I'm concerned that I'm not going to be part of whatever it is that you guys are doing to eliminate some of the noise and.
So we certainly want you to be, before we leave tonight, make sure you see Nate here.
Okay.
Make sure he has the correct contact information, and we'll reach out to you personally prior to the meetings. Make sure
All
you're
right,
involved.
Can you explain how you guys are determining who's a butters and who is not? I'm just curious. Like, what determines that?
As far as like the door-to-door contact, and how do we go about
I'm in some of the pictures in your slides here, so.
Sure, so just to give you a sense of some of the stuff that we've done, so this, and I know nobody reads the newspaper anymore, so this gets noticed in 3 English newspapers, and in this case, because of the timing that we had, meeting 2 Spanish language newspapers. In addition to this, we put flyers on buses coming out of the Lynn and Charlestown garages, which serve this area.
Okay.
We placed flyers in businesses on Broadway, and we also put flyers on the streets, not going up to folks' doors, but on the streets that are, I believe, within 50 yards
Okay.
off the viaduct in either direction to the
Okay.
end. Some of the door-to-door out, we've also, not for this, but we've also had what we call pop-up meetings in Market Basket. The door-to-door stuff was undertaken specifically in advance of the 25% design public hearing, which happened in January. And the door-to-door stuff was undertaken, we provided some materials to members of the Chelsea Collaborative. And they then took those flyers around for us. We wanted to be sensitive about the fact that sometimes there are comments made about the status of immigrants and folks like that. We didn't want to have a wash of people who look like me in my necktie, kind of official, cruising through the neighborhood, sticking stuff up.
Understood.
So we wanted to be sensitive to that. The email database that we have is 1,900 people. That goes out through what's called the Gov delivery. That is operated by MassDot. So my group collects your email address. Please print, as it says. See me at the end of the meeting. I will make sure that goes to Donnie Daly, who's standing right over there. He presses the button on that Gov delivery piece.
Okay.
Donnie and I work together all the time, so we'll make sure that you're in it. And the only thing I would ask is we'll check to see if it's correct. We may have it incorrect. Of course, torpedo your ability to get it. And the only other thing I would check is just check your spam filter. We've had people.
Oh, yeah, no, you're not on my spam filter. I got one email from you guys, and I haven't received anything since.
Okay.
And that was in the beginning of the project.
Okay,
But,
so
I'll
you
do that.
had an email.
Once, yes.
Okay, all right.
I'll talk to you after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
I'll just ask it from here.
Sure.
A follow-up question related to feedback you've gotten from Green Roots or the meeting before that about the efficiency of 111, and it had to do with reevaluating how well or retraining how well the T-starters were doing at Haymarket in terms of dispatching the buses or, managing the crowds and managing payments and so forth. And I was wondering if that was going to be looking into also, because it is a weekly.
Yes, absolutely. So that was Dave Carney who was at the Green Roots meeting. And I don't have a response for you here. Dave would probably have a response for you if he was here. But I will follow up with him, and then I'll follow up with Green Roots, and also we can share information. The Better Bus project that we're doing that looks at all 175 bus routes, that is part of what will be covered in that effort and that initiative. So understanding... we had a set of service delivery standards that were passed in January 2017, and so what we've done is we're in the process of looking at all of the current service delivery that we offer across the network and measuring the gap between what the standard is and what the services that we actually are able to deliver at this point in time, and closing the gap. So part of what your question relates to is the work that's going on through that initiative. So I know that Dave took those comments very seriously when he was hearing about what was going on at Haymarket during specifically the PM rush. And I don't have specifics of how he followed up on that, but I can loop back around. The other thing that I didn't mention that I should have is that in the FY19 operating budget, we have requested an additional 55 operators to add to the operator population to address drop trips and also to help close the gap between what service we're offering today and what the scheduled service is. So that addition in operators is not for the SL3, it's not for early morning, it's a completely separate ask, completely separate request. $3.6 million. And so while those 55 operators won't all be dedicated to Route 111, they will help to fill gaps in service across the network, which will eventually sort of trickle down to Route 111. Obviously, if we're pulling operators off of Route 111 to cover trips that are being lost on other routes, the 55 operators will help to close that gap. So I wanted to mention that as well.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, so again, Nathaniel Curtis, head of Howard Stein Hudson's Public Involvement Group. I've worked extensively with Donnie on projects around the state. Not having a spec in front of me for this particular job, I'll speak to good general principles. So what will happen is once this project goes to a general contractor, probably even a little bit before, the website that's there now that you see will be kind of revised to reflect a construction period. So if you want to see what that looks like, you can Google 128 Adelane. So you can see on that website, it will show basically, it depends on the period that is decided on, but for 128 Adelane, the look-ahead period is 1 week. So every week, there's a refreshment of that site to say what's coming up in the next week. And that goes out both onto the website and through Gov Delivery, which is that automated system that we talked about. In the case of the Arborway, there is a 3-week periodicity. So every 3 weeks, the schedule is updated on the website and an email goes out. In addition to that, typically if there is going to be something like, in this case, one of the weekend operations that Mark told you about, usually you would have 2 weeks back of that. You would have saying, okay, here comes one of our weekend operations, this is what it's going to look like. And then probably 1 week in, you'd get another reminder. And that would happen both over email and on the website. We can certainly look at other tactics. With this project, as I described earlier, we've relied a bit more heavily on paper than we have in some other places. Things posted at the commuter rail station, things posted at the businesses, things posted around the viaduct. So, those are all things that we can continue to look at as we get further into this. But the stuff about the website and the email list would definitely be used. That help? Good.
I just want to add, the contractor is going to be required, once they submit a schedule to us, they're going to be required to come up with a public participation plan for the duration of construction. So they're going to hire a public involvement specialist that they're going to hire for themselves, and they're going to be required to come out and notify the public anytime there's a change in the project. Anyone else? Yes.
I just want to ask you a question. You can respond. I'll use this mic so the TV picks up. So, Joe, I just want to be clear. So I know that there's so many, that we've had a lot of MassDot meetings here. So I just want to make sure we're all clear about what to expect next. I know that the MBTA is coming out with a Chelsea plan for transportation to help with all of these projects, and that's something you hope to roll out mid-April, and there'll be some public outreach on that plan. In addition, unrelated to this, there is a meeting next Thursday night, same place, same time, on the Silver Line project, which will open on April 21st, SL3. So that's back here 1 week from tonight. The next time you're probably here exclusively on this project, however, would likely be in the fall after you have issued a notice to proceed to your contract, or you think you'll be back before then?
I think we'll be back. I mean, because of the coordination that we're doing with the T, I mean, we're not going to separate these projects. In prior meetings, I've committed to you and to the public that we're going to be working with the T. So this is going to be a joint venture throughout the summer until this goes into construction. Yep. That's a good point. So as the public mentioned and you mentioned, there were a lot of concerns about all the projects that MassDOT has going on, not just our Chelsea Viaduct project, but we have the Tobin project that's going on. There's the casino. There's Alfred Street work that we're going to be doing. There's North Washington Street. City of Boston has a Rutherford Ave project that they're going to be working on down the road. So we're taking all of these projects and we're trying to look at them on a timeline over the next 3 years to see when they're going to be impacting each other. So that alone is going to be enough reason for you're going to see me at all these meetings, whether I'm the project manager or not. I'll be going to these Tobin meetings. I'll be going to these North Washington meetings to answer any questions that, you know, we may have impacts between the projects, whether it's MBTA or other projects that we have. Whether or not we need to come back for a specific discussion on this project, we can do that. We can certainly have other meetings and update the public as we go.
I would like to have a commitment that after the notice to proceed is issued on this project, which sounds like it may be the fall, but before the contractor starts, you will be back here at a public meeting with the contractor so we can talk to the contractor before he or she actually begins work. Correct. And you would expect that to be in the fall. Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else? I think that's all we have for questions and comments, so thank you for coming tonight. We're going to be here, so if anybody wants to see us one-on-one, we'll stick around and we'll answer any other questions you may have. Thank you for coming.